Welcome back to Women in Real Estate. I am so honored to have the Kristen Weirden here sitting with us. She's a realtor in Southwest Florida, an amazing one. And also, I've known her for a long time, and she's been pretty much good in everything she starts. And she is a beauty pageant queen, has been in that world for a long time, very, very successful and great connector, just somebody that you can learn a lot from. Also, a mom, an entrepreneur. She's, the breadwinner of her family. And so there's so many different dynamics that she can go into. But today specifically, I want to talk about her life in real estate and the emotional piece behind that transaction, because so many of us know that when somebody's looking for a home, it can get very emotional. It's a big deal to them. So I want to talk to you about that and just share a little more about what you do. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate.
So I started in real estate in 1989.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
It gives away my age. I know. It's okay. It's okay. I've gotten used to it. Yeah. My mom started in 1980, but my grandfather was a builder in Connecticut before that. So there was an article written about me, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and they said real estate is, or dirt is in her blood. And I was like, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because for me, I walk into a place, whether it's a rehab or a new place, automatically I feel like, oh, this is the one. I can show people 10 houses, and I'm just, this is, and then they don't go for it. You're like, what?
So you trust your instinct and your gut on property. Huge tip right there. I don't want to skip over that because I think the feel of a property is very important. And people skip over that like, oh, my gut is playing tricks on me or something when they start analyzing. And it's like, no, you should go with that intuition. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. I find that, I always say I can feel it in the dirt. And I've always, coming from a builder background, enjoy watching things come out of the ground. So then when you have that aspect to it, you're just like, or when you want to recreate what the squares are. So I always tell people when they're looking at something, what are the squares? Do you have to move walls? Because if you don't have to move walls, there might be a lot more potential here than you're seeing. So that kind of stuff, I don't know, that's what excites me.
Yeah.
And from being in it from when I was a kid, driving around in real estate, my mom, backseat of the car. I've been to every open house. Back then, they used to have caravans.
Oh
we didn't have the internet.
Right. No car seats.
And I used to do my homework in the back of the car.
Wow.
On the way over here, I was driving through Pelican Bay, and I remember being here in 1980 at the first open house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Because that's when they started building in there.
So would you say that you've translated that down to your children as far as bringing them into the real estate world or business world, or how would you say you manage that?
Well, managing kids in real estate is probably the most tricky job you can do because depending on the market, sometimes the house will be there in 3 days, not in this market.
Yep.
So now you're into the negotiating with your children and your families. Like, I'm here kind of for Easter, but I'm not because I have to go show a house. And that real estate is one of the things that I look at as a mom, and I'm like, it gives you flexibility, but then you also have to be able to let that deal go.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say, what's more important? The football game? Do I negotiate the football game? How important is this deal? How important is the client? Will they understand? In this market, it's harder because it's moving so fast that you have to kind of just look at it and go, now my kids are older, so they understand now. But when they were younger, there were things I had to let go because it was more important. And you have to find that balance because you have to teach them the balance. But anybody who I always say this to new agents, anybody who gets into real estate, understand your time is not your own because this business is 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Now, some people say they don't answer the phone after 5. That's fine. It's going to affect your dollars.
Yep.
And as long as you're okay with that, who cares what anybody else thinks?
Yeah.
But I do have a cutoff. Like, unless you're in another country, I'm not answering the phone at 10.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in that. I think you manifest your clients, you manifest your properties. And if someone's not jiving with you or not respecting your boundaries, then you take a step back. So in that regard, when you do have a client that oversteps those boundaries, how do you handle that?
Well, I immediately write an email to the broker outlining exactly what happened because you don't want it to come back and bite you in the rear end, number one. I had one person who was actually a referral from a family friend and their family had bought a lot of real estate from me. And he just was very nasty on the phone. I mean, the names, calling, yeah, I know, right? Adult
Right,
people
right,
are
yeah.
acting
No,
like this.
I believe it. Trust me.
And
I've seen it
I just sat there and I was like, and I did that kind of regressive thing that we do. We go back to when we were kids and we just kind of take it. And then I'm writing the email to my broker because I'm like, you know what? Let me tell my broker what happened. Even though I worked for my mom for so long, I kind of already know, because she was a broker, the outcome. That he was like, listen, if you don't want to talk to me, just do everything in writing. And I was like, that's all I needed was that permission.
Yeah.
But had it been anybody else, I probably would have fired them. And they've called me since then. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so busy right now. I can't take you on as a client.
Yeah.
Once I finished that deal, even though they apologized and everything, I was like, no, if you've done it once, you're going to do it again. And I don't need the $20,000, $30,000 commission that bad.
Just gracefully bow out.
Yeah, once it was done. And if they would have been, like I said, if they wouldn't have been part of this whole other atmosphere of people, and I even went to them and I said, this is what happened, and I will never work with them again after it was all done.
Yeah.
After I got paid.
Well, and that seems to be a through line with these interviews, is that you finish the deal and then you gracefully bow out, right?
And
I love that process.
I know people who've bowed out earlier.
Sure.
And like I said, had it not been this whole referral of probably 7 or 8 deals with this family,
Yeah.
I would have been, excuse me, I have to go, hung up the phone, wrote an email, goodbye. Because I already had the listing,
Yeah.
so I was going to get paid regardless. But, I definitely tell people, if you're being mistreated, do not put up with it. Sometimes people have a bad day, but that's still not an excuse to be just straight up cruel to somebody.
Yeah, I love that. So we were talking earlier off camera, actually, and I'm like, oh, I wish we would have gotten that on camera. But we were talking about the emotional piece around purchasing a property, especially, and selling, right? Because you have sellers that this is not just a piece of property to them, it's their whole life. Their kids wrote on this wall and their grandma, stayed in this room. And so there was a quote that you gave that I thought was amazing, but how do you manage that with a client? Because I'm sure half the time you are, just in the doings of the deal, and the other half of the time, maybe you have to double as a therapist of some kind,
Absolutely. Yeah. The best thing I ever did was get into some coaching about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, because I started to see how I was already doing it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, I'm already talking to these people about this stuff. Because when people are going through a divorce, let's say, I'll use that one as an example, they're not talking. You have to balance, and then you have the legalities of being a realtor there.
Yeah.
But you have to balance the emotions of the people. Or, like she doesn't want to sell, he wants to sell. You have to balance that. Then you have, say, people who are elderly, and they've lived in it forever. And you just listen to them like they're your grandparents. There's always something that's going on in somebody's life that you're buying or selling with that you can relate back to your own personal family or friends. And you pull from that and you talk to people, and you have to have a lot of empathy in certain situations. I'm more of a hands-on person, and a lot of people have assistants and things like that. But I'm more of like, I want to know what's going on, understand where they're coming from. Now, the other side of that is when you're trying to get a buyer to work with you, or you're trying to get an agent or a seller to work with you, that's a little bit different. And you have to know what's going on with them, but you have to sell yourself at the same time. And that's a balance that's extremely difficult for a lot of people, because some people are hard sell, sell, sell. And those people are like, but this is my home.
Yeah.
And then you have to I have to be this person, and I have to be that person. And then you lose the listing or you lose the sale. And then you're heartbroken.
Yeah.
And another great one for new agents, or any agents will probably agree, but new agents need to know, you will get your heart broken in this business more than any relationship you've ever had. Because you're like, oh yeah, I got the listing. They liked me. Because there's do they like me in this business?
Yeah, sure.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? Did I do something wrong? Is there something I missed? Why didn't they pick me? And then you have to realize there's over 5,000 realtors in our town.
Yeah.
It's not me.
So would you, totally, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. So would you say that in order to stand out, one of the most important things is to be aware of personalities and be a good coach in that regard? when you're talking to somebody that either you want to list the property for or you want to come to as a buyer's agent?
I think there's a lot of that in there, the empathy, the understanding where they're coming from, and working with their personality. But then at the same time, I've found, especially some of the deals that I've gotten that I'm like, I can't believe I got that, is because I stood there and I said, okay, listen, here's the deal.
Yeah.
You can ask me to find a buyer for you, but unless I have the listing, nobody's walking in my door saying, I want a house in this neighborhood, unless I have a reason to market to that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Or the people that are looking in that type of household. So you're going to have a bunch of realtors traipsing in here saying, oh yeah, I want to show you my house. It's like, you can show me all your houses, and I can see a dozen of them, but unless I'm marketing to the person to get them, your funnel, either you've already had the buyer, you've already had the seller. Now this market, it works a little bit in because we have more buyers than properties.
Yeah.
But even then, I'm just straight up on it. I'm like, thank you for showing me your house.
Yeah.
But I can't cold call people on a house I don't have listed.
Yeah.
And I can't market to people on a house I don't have listed.
Yeah.
So a lot of sellers don't understand even how things work.
Sure.
So sometimes I educate people and I get the deal, and it has a little less to do with personality, but they're just like, oh, she knows so much. And then it's the same thing when you get Zillow calls with buyers. It's like, oh, well, I want to, it's like, we're all part of the MLS.
Yeah.
So you're going to call 100 people, or you can just talk to me, tell me what you want, and I'll send them to you.
Absolutely.
So and people don't know how it works. So we have to also educate people. Even if they've bought or sold a home in the last 25 years, things have changed. The contracts change every year. Yeah. And like, oh, well, back in the day, yeah, we don't do it like that. Or we're not in another state. This is how it is in Florida. So people don't understand that. So I also find educating people and the coaching you have a better chance of making that deal work.
As a woman in real estate, would you say that you tend to focus more on a certain demographic, like as far as more women that come to you, or do you feel like you can work well with men and women? And when you're working with men, okay, which we love our men, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're working with men, do you feel like there's a different dynamic at times that you have to handle as a woman in real estate?
Well, I find that the first thing you have to do is it a couple? Because unfortunately, when you're easy on the eyes, it's harder. Mm-hmm. And I learned that really early on. I lost deals because they're like, my wife can't work with you.
And the important thing is to not take that personally, right?
You can't. Yeah. God made me who I am.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I really, really did.
Yeah.
And I would downplay and hair in a ponytail, no makeup, showing houses kind of thing. People didn't want to trust me with back that we had escrow checks.
Right. Wow.
And they're like, because you remember, I was young. I started when I was 19.
Yeah.
So they're like, can I give you this $20,000 check? I'm like, yeah, my mom owns the office. I've got this.
And I know from experience, because I started our business when I was 19, that it eats at you because you feel like, wait a minute, am I not the professional that I think I am?
Right.
And it makes you feel a little less than. So
right.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up, and that, women at times when you're working, there's a lot of powerful male investors, mm-hmm. and we love them. And I never downplay men and say, yeah, women are way better. I'll say women power, that's amazing. But I don't like it when, there's people out there who are screaming women power and men suck and all that, Right. Most men are amazing, but I want to speak to the point that mm-hmm. there is that dynamic where when you're working with men who are single, okay, and I love you brought up the couples too, but mm-hmm. who are single, who may be investors or whatever, mm-hmm. how do you keep that professionalism?
Well, this is a great example is I have the back of the trolley.
Yes.
I have a different phone number on the back of the trolley.
She has a big ad on the Naples trolley, and I see her face every time I leave the house, pretty much. You're everywhere, which is great for marketing.
It's great for marketing, but now you have a pretty girl on the back of the trolley who's professional, but mm-hmm. what do they see first? Mm-hmm. So you have to have a little bit thicker skin, too, when you're dealing with certain people who might test the waters, cross the boundaries. Let's get coffee. Mm-hmm. We don't have to get coffee to talk about real estate. Mm-hmm. I Zoom really well.
Yeah. Love that.
We can talk on the phone, FaceTime. You want to see me? Here I am. I don't have to be up close and personal with you until I get to know you.
Technology.
So technology is great for us mm-hmm. as women selling real estate. It's also going to be very dangerous for a woman selling real estate. It's very scary. I I stopped doing open houses, not for any other reason than I like to give new agents a chance if they want to.
Sure.
But then if it's a woman, you can't do the open house by yourself. I mean, there are hindrances.
Yeah.
For safety reasons just alone. I've had to drag friends to showings because although they kind of checked out and I have a copy of their license, I still just have somebody sit in the car.
Yeah, it's a great
with
point.
their phone in their hand, because it's scary. And then you have the people that are just, they lean in a little too far. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry, can I help you? Here, would you like to look at that?
Right.
Here, why don't I hand it to you?
Yeah.
And you can be diplomatic about it. And you can also, as women, we've learned as we've gotten older too, how to put up a wall and still be professional and just say, I'm sorry. And I'm taking that as a little inappropriate. Am I taking it wrong? And if you call them out in a way that you give them an out, most of the time people will back off. And I think that's also in life.
Mm-hmm. Give them an out.
If you give people an out, they will usually back down.
Yeah.
And even in negotiations too, for real estate or anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you give them an out, like, oh, we can do it this way, or we can do it this way. I mean, if this works better for you, I can maybe make that work for them. And, oh, okay, yeah. Because it's not quite that hard sell, but we've kind of figured out like a middle ground. And then they save face, especially as buyers and sellers. Nobody wants to feel like they don't know what they're doing. That's the other thing, egos.
Well, it is an emotional transaction,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to be very delicate with that. At the same time, do the best you possibly can financially for the buyer or the seller. And that can be a delicate line, right? So I love that you gave the tip of give them an out, because
Mm-hmm.
in everything in life, whether it's you're being hit on or you want to give the buyer some options, it's huge. And we always talk about that, well, it may or may not be for you. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Always
exactly.
giving them
May
an
or
out.
may not be for you. And as a realtor, if you walk into a home, and a lot of times, especially with Zillow, this has been a big thing with Zillow. Oh, I want to see this house, and this house. And meanwhile, you've looked up properties, been doing this long enough.
Yep.
You gave me your list, and I've got this property, this property, and this property, and they don't intersect. So I try to find out what they like about those, because you don't want to waste your time on houses they can't afford either, or just don't fit what they need.
Yeah.
Like, there's no school within 100 miles kind of thing, and you have 2 small children. How do you plan on making, you're homeschooling?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I am. Okay, then let's.
We're going to teleport there.
Yeah. Well, I have had that happen where they want to be really away from civilization, or they want a big farm or something.
I'm like,
and
really?
You do know the bus
teleport?
ride
No.
from here is about an hour and a half, and the ones I found are a little bit closer. And it's like, oh, no, we're just going to homeschool. We made that decision. Oh, okay, then I'll show you whatever.
Sure.
Then I'll change my list based on your needs. But with Zillow, sometimes they don't intersect. And when you look at it, you're like, oh. And I will tell you, though, about 70% of the time, they end up buying a house that I picked off of my list. Because the pictures on Zillow don't represent the neighborhood that I know about after 30 years. Or the neighborhood, the distance to the grocery store, things that when they start driving around, they're like, oh, where's the grocery store?
Yeah.
Oh, it's way over there.
Yeah.
But that house that I was thinking of showing you happens to be over there. And they're like, oh, we should see that. I'm like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, you probably should,
Yeah.
as I've been telling you. So that brings up a good point, and really my last question, unless you have any more tips. But this has been so informative, and I've realized, being recently licensed, and I told you,
Congratulations.
thank
by the way.
thank you. I've realized there's so much of a back-end world that buyers and sellers and investors, they don't even see when they're dealing in the transaction. And sometimes they even look at realtors as greedy because they don't know all the things that a real estate agent has to go through. I mean, it's a lot, as many of you are aware. So if you could share one thing or a couple of things with buyers and sellers about what you do, what would that be? What would you want them to know of how hard you actually work, basically?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because what happens is we have, for example, you'll have a deal like this market. It's a great example. This market, you have a house will sell in a week. Okay, if it's priced right, because there's stuff sitting on the market right now because everybody's 20%ed themselves to the point that people are going,
Sure.
But
I don't know about
it'll
that.
sell in a week. So they're like, well, what am I paying you for? Have you ever been in a multiple offer situation? No. Do you know the liability in a multiple offer situation? Do you know that you have to timestamp everything because somebody's going to get hurt at the end because they didn't get it. There's that emotional component.
Yep.
The realtor is going to get hurt. He didn't get a commission. The buyers are going to be hurt. They didn't get the house. You have to negotiate a backup offer because you usually have an inspection period and somebody's got some out somewhere. People make quick decisions. They're going to run screaming because they're like, I don't want to spend this money and lose the deposit. I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
That you have to know all of these things. You can't just say, oh, I have multiple offers. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work that way. Sometimes you have to make a spreadsheet because
Great point.
and write everything down and say, okay, because the papers become so much for a seller that it's better than just see all the highlights.
Yeah.
This is the deposit they have. It takes a while to make a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then again, the liability. I always tell people, you're not just paying me for my expertise. You're paying me so neither of us get sued too.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this long enough and we're professionals. And when they want to reduce the commission, same thing. I'm like, come on, guys. I work really hard and I go above and beyond. And you want me to work for 1%? I can lay by the pool for 1%.
Yeah.
You know, I'm making that somewhere in my life in an investment or something that I don't have to sell myself short.
And I'm a big believer in you get what you pay for, right? And why wouldn't that apply to real estate professionals? And if you pay someone the percentage they deserve, they're going to get you. If it's a good one, they're going to get you the price that you deserve, right? So
exactly. And it doesn't matter the level
you
of
make
the
it
deal.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the level. It's a $4,000 commission or $40,000 commission. As professionals, we're supposed to. I know there's people who don't, but I know I do, and I know a lot of people that do. We give every one of them the same amount of effort. And with buyers, the other side is they're not the ones paying us because in Florida we get paid off the transaction. And they're like, oh, well, I'm going to talk to the listing agent. I want to talk to the listing because they think they're going to get a better deal. And that's where 90% of the time they're wrong because realtors will take money off the bottom if they have to. But in this market with deals farther between, before we'd sell, a couple a month, 3, 5, whatever a month, now you've got one here and then you've got a gap because there's not enough product.
yeah.
And so your buyers are looking for a deal and there's not a lot of deals. And they want you to help them get the house and take money off. It's like, no, I just spent all this time finding this deal for you because there's less. So why should I take less? And you're going to find that listing agents, by calling up every listing agent on Zillow, they're not going to take less either because their deals are spread out more. So we might be making the same because the prices are higher, but you've got gaps in your income. And that's not fun.
No. No, I mean, obviously, at the Higdon Group, we're huge believers in residual and creating that for yourself and having it where you create some type of system that keeps paying you, right? Whatever that looks like. So I definitely agree with that. It's amazing. So any last tips for this audience that you feel is worth mentioning?
Let's see. Depending on where you're going into real estate, because this is like a broad spectrum kind of thing, that remember when you're doing real estate in other states, it's going to be different. So if you've got people coming in from other states, you have to educate them. But talking about other states, try to have your own referral network.
Yeah.
I have Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, New York,
Smart.
and California.
Really smart. Yeah.
And when I have a listing that might be a little tough sell, or in this market might be a little bit higher price than people are used to in that neighborhood, but they're not used to in those states,
Yeah.
be ready to pay 30%
Sure.
and market to those people that you know or their areas, because that's how you're going to get your gap business. Do you have anybody looking to buy real estate in Florida? I'm giving a 30%. Used to be 25, but now 30% seems to be, the little tickler that gets people. So make your own referral network, because when things are slow or times are different, or even when times are great, those people will send you people. And then you do the same. I have somebody I know up there who's selling, or somebody said, oh, are you near this area? They just appreciate the phone call that you thought about them, and you will make more money that way.
Such a good tip. And I was just talking to a friend in real estate, and he said that he had a referral for someone up north, and the person said, well, no, I don't do that percentage. I don't do that. And they gave him a much less percentage of what they offer, or what they would pay out for referrals. And he was like, well, that's okay. I can call 20 other people and refer this business. If you don't want it, just tell me. So I think there's some back and forth there, negotiation. But hey, if you're getting a referral from someone who curated that buyer or seller, then be flexible, because you want that deal, and you don't know if in a few months from now or a few years from now that person is going to want to buy from you again or sell with you again.
Exactly.
And you get 100% of that commission. So
Absolutely.
people are so focused on the here and now versus the long term.
They don't, okay, so real estate's the long game.
Yeah.
Unless you only plan on being it for 5 years.
Right.
The first 2 years are a struggle. I tell everyone, you will not come out in the green for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
If you do, it'll be that one miracle deal. And then you're gonna be so happy you're gonna want to recreate it, and then you're gonna get your heart broken because you didn't.
Yeah, sure.
You know, now you're like, why can't I get another $50,000 commission?
Yeah.
Because they don't drop in your lap.
Right, totally.
But I also say money is money. You know, in the first 2 to 5 years in real estate, money is money. If it's a $4,000 deal, that's your advertising, that's your taxes on the last deal because you didn't save your money. I mean,
sure.
You really have money's money, deals are deals. Negotiation, and just go in there and get it done. I never turn down money.
Yeah.
People are like, I can't believe you sold that $130,000 condo. Friend of the family, but I would have done it anyways. Why?
Sure.
That's a $4,000 commission.
That's huge.
That's like a vacay.
Yeah, and also you don't know where those people are going to be in 10 years or 5 years or whatever. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Treat every deal the same. Go in with your integrity, your highest and best, and love it.
Yeah,
so
money's money.
Money is money. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kristen. You're amazing. I appreciate
you
you so much for being here and doing this. And, you know, I'm learning just like you guys are. But where we do know how to make it count is in marketing. And so if you have any questions around marketing, developing the team, the systems, or you have questions around these interviews, go to higdongroup.com/Jess. If you have different questions around what was said or who you want to be introduced to, I'm happy to help make that happen or get you the resources that you need. Higdongroup.com/Jess. Fill out the contact me form, and I'll get some information from you and make sure that you get to the proper place. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. Kristen Weirden out of Southwest Florida, amazing realtor, and have a great day, and we'll see you next time.